It was recently announced that Space Marine 3 is already in development, and it's only been 6 months since the release of Space Marine 2. In its current state, Space Marine 2 is pretty bare bones, especially on the PvP side of things, as well as only having 2 major content updates that each added a new operation. 6 months in, PvP was finally given a new map, which has shown that PvE is frankly the priority, and that's perfectly fine with me. PvP has never been the focal point for roughly 90% of the currently available Warhammer games, instead always centering around a story campaign mixed in with co-op features. Warhammer does have the best canvas for anything and everything co-op related. So here's the thing about Warhammer 40,000 and why I think it was a bad idea to have already announced Space Marine 3's development. The universe of 40K is incredibly massive, a galaxy spanning 1 million colonized worlds, all under the Imperium of Man, and with so much lore that it's easy to write a story within 40K, but difficult to make it a good story. Now, there are just as many good stories from the books as there are bad ones. It's the same with the games, though it can be argued we have more bad and okay 40K games than we have amazing ones. And yes, I'm talking about their stories, not the gameplay. We have many 40K games that have decent or fun gameplay, yet it's the story that makes it fall short. The story element usually comes down to how well that particular writer or group of writers not only knows what Warhammer 40K is, but also understands what Warhammer 40K is. It pretty much boils down to, just think of it whenever a new Warhammer 40K game is announced, or a book or something within Warhammer media, always look at the writer or the author, whoever. If it's someone who's well versed in 40K, understand that it's going to turn out to be a good story. Always kind of think of it that way. That's where Space Marine comes in. As it stands, Space Marine 2 is still a blank canvas as far as what can be added to increase content. It has a self-contained story mixed in with official lore that allows an almost endless amount of content for its PvE, mainly the operations. Operations itself is even further self-contained due to the fact that it's a whole separate story that essentially follows 6 other main characters in their eternal war against the enemies of the Imperium. Now, with Space Marine 3 already in development, the next question is how much longer will Space Marine 2 be supported? Space Marine 3 has been officially announced before Space Marine 2 even got its first new class post-launch, and that's where this video comes in. Now, currently we have 6 available classes, and every single class is also a named Space Marine, and the whole thing in Warhammer itself is generally, when it comes to the Space Marines themselves, usually they're characters that get killed off pretty quickly, but unless they're a named character, then they're going to be sticking around for a very long time, or they'll have probably like a glorious death later on in their stories. But generally speaking, a named Space Marine is way more powerful than an unnamed Space Marine. On the topic of the currently available classes, let's quickly list the official names of each class, as well as the name of the individual representing said class, before moving on to what future classes we can potentially see. Now, this is all based off how they work on the tabletop, which will let you quickly understand why we use a standard name for each class in Space Marine. So let's start with the Tactical Marine, currently represented by Brother Valius of the Ultramarines. Officially, the name of the Tactical Marine is called an Intercessor. However, they're known as Intercessors when they're equipped with bolt weapon variants. When you equip your Tactical Marine with the Plasma Incinerator, he becomes a Hellblaster, and when using the Melta, he is an Eradicator. To avoid confusion with the other classes going forward, Melta weapons are only ever used by Eradicator squads, and Plasma weapons are only ever used by Hellblaster squads, except for the Plasma Pistol. Plasma Pistol can be used by anyone. Next up is the Assault Marine, who's represented by Brother Vespasius of the Ultramarines, referred to as a Jump Pack Intercessor, but is mixed in with Assault Intercessors, which I believe was done this way to have more options, just to not to be as restrictive as it is on the tabletop. And that's pretty much it for the Assault Marine. It's pretty standard one-to-one, kind of easy to interpret in a Space Marine. The only other variant that the Assault Marine has is actually a class called the Inceptors. Inceptors are one of my favorite classes. I hope really makes it into Space Marine 2 before Space Marine 3 comes out, but one can only hope. Inceptors I will deal with in another video, so just look out for that one. Moving on to the Vanguard, this is where it throws you off a bit. See, Vanguards aren't a class. They're instead an amalgamation of Reaver squads, which use the bolt carbine, grapple launcher, combat knife, and the signature skull helms that the Vanguard uses. The Oculus carbines are used by Incursor squads, and the Melter Rifle, once again used by Eradicators. Representing the Vanguard is Brother Decimus of the Ultramarines. Put all that together and you have a class that excels in close quarters. It's my theory that Saber Interactive chose to condense multiple classes from the tabletop into one class when they were designing the Vanguard, which explains why the Vanguard has all these different options, at least as far as how the Vanguard has been kitted out. Snipers, this one actually is pretty straightforward. On tabletop, they're actually referred to as eliminators, so I don't know why they did the name change. There are no variants of the snipers as far as I know. They're just called eliminators, and that's it. They specialize in long range weaponry. I know that they do have in Space Marine 2, they are equipped with the bolt carbine and the stalker bolt rifle. Maybe that's why they're called snipers. I'm not too sure. I don't really see eliminators used on tabletop often, although then again, I'm not too versed in the tabletop to begin with, so I'm not familiar with every single class. I did have to do some research on these guys just to make sure I got my source right. Otherwise, yeah, they could have just called snipers eliminators and call it a day. The sniper is being represented by Brother Scipius of the Ultramarines. I have not heard his name very often in Space Marine. Actually, I don't think I've ever heard his name once, so I don't know if it's pronounced Scipius or Scipius, but I think it sounds more mature to call him Scipius. I know that there's a taunt in the game where every single Marine will actually name themselves and then say ready to serve, something like that. Last but not least, we have the Bulwarks, also known as Blade Guard veterans. However, they only use power swords, although if you watched Secret Levels and He Shall Know No Fear episode that featured Warhammer, it does see the Blade Guard veteran Sergeant Mataris using an axe, while the other two Blade Guards are using power swords. Our resident Blade Guard veteran is being represented by Brother Quartus of the Ultramarines. By tabletop standards, the Bulwark would have been called Blade Guard Veteran, and he would only have access to the power sword, so it does make sense to call him a Bulwark instead. Tactically, you can use the chainsword and the power fist. I've never seen a Blade Guard Veteran ever use a chainsword outside of tabletop in any of the media, and I'm not really well versed in the power fist. I keep forgetting power fist is even a melee weapon to begin with. And then the last one we have is the Heavy. Now, they're actually called Heavy Intercessors on tabletop. And technically speaking, by tabletop standards, he only has access to the Heavy Bolter and Multi-Melta, so only 2 of the 3 weapons, because the Heavy Plasma Incinerator, again, is used by Hellblaster squads, and Hellblasters use Tacticus armor, which is the armor worn by the Tactical Marine. So it's a little weird to see the Heavy and Gravis armor using a Plasma Incinerator. There are no Hellblaster Heavy Intercessor squads. So unless something changed on the tabletop, then I guess it would make sense then. The Heavy is represented by Brother Straben of the Ultramarines, and the final thing that kind of makes it a little bit weird between the Heavy and the Tactical Marine is the use of the Heavy Bolt Rifle, which is actually basically like the little LMG looking one that you can use on the Tactical Marine. Those are actually used by Heavy Intercessors only, so I don't know why they gave that to the Tactical Marine when he already has a boatload of weapons to choose from. It would have been nice to see that being used by the Heavy. Okay, so now you see just how many variety of flavors a Space Marine can come in. Space Marine 2 kind of just touches the tip of the iceberg, so to speak, even though some of these classes are actually a combination, amalgamation of several other classes, just to kind of give us more variety. So what we're actually going to do now is talk about the new potential class coming out, and that rumor being the Apothecary. The Apothecary right now is a very popular option, and to be quite frank, with a new difficulty coming out, as well as that new class, it should go hand in hand that new class should be the Apothecary. So let's kind of start off with a lore bit on Apothecaries before we actually move on to how an Apothecary could possibly work in Space Marine 2 and what their primary purpose will be. So Apothecaries are essentially combat medics. They use a special tool called the Narthecium, which is usually a wrist-mounted device, but can also be found on armatures attached to their power packs, and holds everything you would find in a first aid pack, if that first aid pack was in the 41st millennium and only meant for demigod soldiers. They also contain surgical equipment allowing for the Apothecary to perform surgeries on the battlefield. The Narthecium not only helps administer aid, but it also used to extract the gene seeds from dead Space Marines. Apothecaries will try their hardest to get to fallen battle brothers to extract their gene seeds, which is used to create more Space Marines. They play a pivotal role in not only maintaining the physical well-being of their chapter, but also ensuring their chapter's survival. Especially when it comes to their gene seeds, they have to make sure that they're extracting the gene seed from a fallen battle brother of their specific chapter, and not extracting a gene seed from a different chapter, because then those Space Marines created from that chapter are not going to have the same characteristics, personality, what have you, of their specific Primarch. Now let's get into the actual gameplay. How would an Apothecary work? Now, there is a mod out there for Space Marine 2 that adds the Apothecary. I don't know if that's just something that is a cosmetic thing just to give you the armor that they wear, or if there actually is some sort of gameplay feature to it. But currently, how I could see an apothecary officially working in Space Marine 2 is Medicae packs are usually found at ammo stations, and usually they'll always at least have the one Medicae pack. So it's up to the team on who needs it or who wants it. An apothecary could alleviate a situation like that by picking up the Medicae pack and either being able to carry one extra pack for a total of 3, and instead of using it like a regular med pack to heal themselves, they could instead be used to add a charge or multiple charges to the Narthecium, turning the apothecary into a mobile Medicae station. The Narthecium could either have charges that are segmented, just like how health and armor are segmented, or it could have a percentage charge. The closer it is to 100%, the more times health can be administered, and giving you the option of how much health to dispense to an ally. Or if the Narthecium was to use segmented charges, it would just give a battle brother 1 full health segment per available charge, and the skill tree could potentially give you alternate ways on how to heal teammates, allowing you to fine-tune your build to meet specific playstyles, or finding that optimal healing route. Okay, and here's a fine example of an apothecary. What you're looking at is a Grey Knight apothecary, so a little bit different than your standard apothecary. We're actually here in Warhammer 40K Demon Gate. Obviously, one of the classes you can bring into Warhammer to kind of keep your team's survivability up is an apothecary. You can always opt out to not bring one in. Here it is a prime example of what the loadout could look like. Now, apothecaries here in 40K, or not here in 40K, here in Demon Gate, as you can see, their loadout is highly restricted. They only have one ranged weapon and one melee weapon, but their melee weapon is also their healing ability, so it's the Narthecium. Nartheciums are exclusive to apothecaries. Obviously, their ranged weapon here, as you can see, is a wrist-mounted bolter. I don't think that's ever a weapon we're going to see in Space Marine 2, although it would be pretty cool to see it make its way in, but from a lore perspective, wrist-mounted bolters are exclusive to Grey Knights. But as you can see, you could swap out their ranged weapon for something else. As far as I know, apothecaries in 40K, I don't know why I keep saying apothecaries in 40K, apothecaries in Demon Gate can equip two-handed weapons. So as you can see here, they can equip an incinerator, a silencer, a side cannon. Obviously these are Grey Knight exclusive weapons, so I could possibly see the apothecary in Space Marine 2. Maybe you could outfit them with a heavy bolter like the heavy does, and then obviously their melee weapon is their Narthecium. In Demon Gate, the Narthecium is actually pretty weak, has a pretty weak melee attack, because it's primarily used as a healing ability, but it's nice to have it fall back as a melee just to give the apothecary some more defense other than just working with a ranged weapon. And as you can see here, the apothecary can equip a hammer, so I could see the apothecary in Space Marine 2 if it were to ever come out. You know, it would be nice to actually give the apothecary there the option to equip a hammer as one of its melee weapons. So, you know, give it some variety. I don't want the hammer to be exclusive to just the assault class. Apothecary would actually be a good way to kind of increase the amount of melee weapons you can equip, and you know, I think the hammer would actually work quite well in apothecary, just because they do not carry a primary bolter. They're usually seen with a bolt pistol and then a melee weapon of some sort. So that's how I could see an apothecary be outfitted in Space Marine 2. It would make sense if the apothecary had a passive that allows for possibly a much faster revival speed on down teammates, with the first revival on each ally also taking away their mortal wound, essentially giving them 2 chances to get down rather than just 1, with their second incapacitation actually giving them that mortal wound. The passive could also potentially reduce the respawn timer by half, and as a neat little way to tie in the gene seed whenever it's found, having the apothecary pick it up would allow for an instant respawn of an ally if they've been killed in combat, but it would come at the cost of consuming the gene seed pickup along with the extra XP it brings, because remember, gene seeds are needed to create more Space Marines, so it would be a nice little touch. I would say, man, a nice little feature exclusive to the apothecary. They find a gene seed on the map, the apothecary picks it up. Say you're at a boss battle like the Hive Tyrant, and you have a teammate that dies in battle. You really need them to come back, and it's on a really hard difficulty. You could use the gene seed and instantly bring them back. Again, that's just kind of something I came up with, but I always figured whenever I saw the gene seed, instead of just giving it more XP, why not be able to use it to instantly revive a fallen battle brother? Who knows? As for the signature ability of the apothecary, we could have a few options. The primary version of the signature could allow you to do a squad heal over time that could last for several seconds with faster regen on any contested health that you might have. Basically, think of the bulwark signature, but instead of regenerating armor, you're regenerating health. So alternate versions of the signature could see things like giving the squad an overcharge of health based on the current percentage of their remaining health, with full health granting the maximum overcharge, or decreasing the amount of health damage you take, giving you an adrenaline shot that increases your melee damage while reducing the health damage that you take. And then things that it's just basically things that increase the survivability of the team while also increasing their durability. A little bit more leeway in how the AoE could work as opposed to the Bulwarks version, which you all have to be sitting right there next to the Bulwark. With the Apothecary, it would be squad based rather than AoE based, if that makes sense. With having an Apothecary on and a Bulwark on the team, that's actually the best version of offense and defense put together. So there'd be some nice little combinations you could do. So it's a way to promote more team synergy between all these signature abilities, also maintaining that cohesion as well. Okay, that was a lot for me to go through. This was actually a small little project of mine. Took a good schminute to get all this done. I needed to always fact check myself, make sure everything was right. Who knows, I might still have missed something or might have gotten something wrong still. Either way, I'm always still learning about the universe. There's always something new to learn about Warhammer 40K, as I'm sure you guys do too. I know that some of you have corrected me in the past too, because I was like, oh man, I actually didn't know I skipped a beat. But either way, I did really enjoy making this video. It took me, I don't know, a few days to get through this. It was probably the longest video I have worked on so far. But do appreciate you watching if you stay till the end of this video. Again, this was a project, like an actual full-length, full-feature project. A lot of time went into it, so hopefully you guys appreciate the work I put into it. Trying to increase the quality of these videos. I didn't realize just how much longer it takes to edit these videos when you want to try and put some more effort into it. Hopefully, if you're new to Warhammer, you learned some more new stuff. I know I certainly did when I was doing all the research to make this video. So until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on that next video, whatever it's going to be. Peace, and have a good one.